I'm Delia Melody, and this is my partner Zeigha. We're YouTubers and trans rights and human rights activists, originally from Florida, currently living in Oregon. If you're one of my dearly boppers who watches my YouTube channel and listens to my music, then you're probably already familiar with a lot of our story and what we've been through in the past 2 years, but I mean, it's been rough. We actually met 3.5 years ago, right after I found myself getting divorced and disowned by my parents and like thrown into a mental hospital and being beaten after I came out. We became friends, and especially on Facebook, they were one of my biggest fans and supporters when people were being like really rude or ugly or mean to me or harassing me on the internet, which just kind of comes with the territory. So I spent most of that first 2 years after I came out either working at Regions until unfortunately I had to leave for mental health reasons, or after that working on my YouTube channel and being an independent activist in Northwest Florida. Thanks to my dearly boppers being super supportive, I was able to release my first album, Phoenix, which I was super proud of. I feel like it's a huge accomplishment for any trans artist, especially, to be able to put together and like release an album with how ugly people can be about a trans woman being a singer. Shortly after that, life became very difficult for me and I became really withdrawn. A lot of my mental health struggles were starting to flare back up. I was dealing with fears that I was being stalked potentially. My relationship was becoming really toxic and even a bit abusive towards me, and instead of reaching out for help, I feel like I was just trying to like run from it. I ended up not finding anywhere to rent in my hometown, so I got an offer from some people online that I went ahead and took up and ended up moving states. It turned out that I wasn't around safe people at all, and while I was living there, I was actually allowed to be raped and hurt and have people attempting to really hurt me and brainwash me into like just trying to gaslight me into insanity under the influence of a cocktail of drugs, which I thought was just LSD. I was left alone really sort of to die and ended up having to go and find another place to stay after I lost a lot of support. It was really hurtful. I felt really slut-shamed considering everything that had happened and everything that was done to my body that I did not consent to, and under the influence of like more things than what I ever consented to having in my body, as I later found out from people with more experience than I had. I ended up spending the next year moving from place to place, sometimes like unknowingly and unwittingly just going right back to my abusers because I was just so brainwashed, because it's just the substances I was on make your brain so malleable, and they all took advantage of that to hurt me in so many ways. Over the course of all of these events, pretty much most of everything I owned was either given away or taken and donated away without my consent when I had no ability to do anything about it. In some cases, things had to be left behind. In other cases, I was even kidnapped by people and ended up having like my entire collection of movies and CDs and games and DVDs that I kept in a CD wall, along with a whole bunch of my clothing and other really important possessions that like I held kind of closely to my heart, like what I was able to fit in a suitcase just sort of like vanishing on me. I ended up having to leave behind the guitar that I used to record Phoenix. A guitar that was a family heirloom that I was given when I was 13 ended up being taken by someone who was abusive towards me, along with a bass that I had paid off when I was in college and a lot of stuff that fans sent for me to be able to work on my next album. All of the books and like special sort of possessions that I held close to my heart that you can see in a lot of my older videos were taken from me when I was in another place in North Carolina and just like donated away, along with some other music equipment and lighting equipment that I had spent almost $300 on right before I had ended up moving from Pensacola. I ended up getting into a lot of very dangerous situations that are very triggering and traumatic to think about, that I still really feel like I probably need some therapy for. And it wasn't until one of my close friends from Pensacola, Nicole, saw one of my videos that I was able to just briefly post to Facebook, panicked in like a brief state while I was in a kidnapper's bathroom. She was able to get me on a Greyhound back to Atlanta, where Zeigha was staying, and unfortunately they were staying with an abusive family member who they were locked into like an abusive financial situation with regards to a vehicle and where they were staying, and there were other things that I don't want to like necessarily like speak like for Zeigha on, but it was a really troublesome situation, and we had to leave to go back to Pensacola. Unfortunately, while we were there, support for us was just pretty much non-existent, and it ended up in like a slew of events where we ended up finally in a homeless shelter in Tallahassee for a time before we were able to thankfully crowdfund the ability to go stay in California for a time. But unfortunately that was not an ideal situation whatsoever, and we ended up in like just a really toxic situation for a super long time that almost just completely mentally devastated the both of us. And it wasn't until we ended up unfortunately in another homeless shelter in California for a time that we finally ended up being able to come to Oregon, where we now currently stay with Violet, who is amazing and just like so loving and perfect. And it's like now things are finally sort of starting to feel like they're almost stable again, and it's really, I feel like I've been holding in a lot of emotions over it, because you know, it's like I'm in Oregon now, and I'm actually on the Oregon health plan, which I'm really thankful for, because you know, it covers my hormones, which for so many times during those periods in the past year and a half where I've just been like really super duper homeless, and still struggling to work on everything and do this, which has been not easy at all. I've had to be off of them so many times, but now thankfully, you know, I'm in a place where that care is covered, and even the ability to go and get the letter that I need for my vaginoplasty and even get that done is all covered. So I'm so thankful for that, because you know, trying to think of being able to save up for that is so ridiculous, knowing that like a vaginoplasty usually costs as much as like a really good brand new car. So I'm glad that I live in a state where trans people and our lives are valued, and that that's not something I have to worry about, because when I started all of this, I thought that it would be something I would have to pay for out of my pocket or crowdfund, and it was so ridiculous. For Zeigha and I, you know, it's just like there's so much along the way that just, it's like we lost our entire livelihoods basically for being who we are and for being together and for sticking through all of it. In my case, I ended up finding out that there's a strong potential that a lot of the violence I ended up experiencing was actually part of something that was at least partially planned out specifically to hurt me. And right now it's like, you know, this is sort of the space that we are in, and like the little bit of equipment that we have to work in, and you know, space to sleep and things like that. There's a pretty orchid that Violet got for me because she's so wonderful. Most of our belongings sort of fit in suitcases. It doesn't really look like a place to live in. It's not, you know, furnished and set up to work in. We sometimes borrow the space in Violet's room whenever I'm trying to make videos, because it's a little bit like prettier looking for my videos, but it's at the same time the sound in there is just horrible because it's this really enclosed room and the reverb is awful. And in addition, we ended up, when we were put into a homeless shelter in Tallahassee, having to leave behind Zeigha's car, which we have no idea what even is going on with that now at all. So basically we're trying to replace our livelihoods in a sense without like, I don't care about like little small things and things like that, because it's like, you know, we have the internet. I spend most of my time working anyway. You know, it's like our lives are not entirely lacking for quality, I would say. But I feel like, you know, we definitely need the ability to be able to transport ourselves. Zeigha, especially, their knee is not necessarily doing well for them to be like walking all the time, and me, like when I try to do it, I'm having even more problems with some of the muscles in my legs where I've experienced injuries in the past as well. So we kind of put together the numbers on some things that are kind of essentials. Like the top priority obviously is to get into like a really cheap, affordable, but like reliable vehicle. So that was sort of the first expense that we calculated. We went ahead and calculated together the equipment we need to be able to really get to the level of what we want to be able to do as far as our work on our joint channel together on YouTube, as well as replacing the equipment to be able to get back to the videos that I was doing on my YouTube channel back in 2016 over the summer. We went ahead and calculated in the price to replace the guitar that I use to record Phoenix so that I can continue to be able to record and pursue my career in music now that I've moved to a much better place for it. We may end up having to replace the amplifier that Zeigha got me for my birthday last year because it keeps acting up and cutting out, and it's not really recordable at this point, so we don't know if it needs to be repaired or replaced, but we would have to do something about that. Right now we're using two little moon chairs, one of which is not very good for my back and neck to sit in when we're recording videos or want to do anything here that's not sitting on an air mattress. So we went ahead and calculated in the price to replace the futon that I had in Pensacola, which I ended up actually just giving away because someone needed a futon, which I'm glad that they were able to make use of it, but it's something that definitely would make recording on our joint channel easier. It would make sharing quality time and space in the room easier, and being able to just have a place to sit and work easier, because otherwise it's like everywhere we sit it's like there's no back support, or it's like a chair that we have to borrow. We have to borrow the lamp that we're using for our lighting, which is a bit horrible, but we went ahead and included the price to replace the lighting that I bought right before I left Pensacola in the whole total amount that we're trying to fund as well. Zeigha ended up leaving behind $500 worth of makeup somewhere, and we both lost a lot of clothing, some of which I bought once again right before I left Pensacola, a lot of which was really expensive, some of which was fan gifts for my birthday a couple of years ago. All my exercise clothing is gone. A lot of my more practical shoes to be able to wear for like good walking, which I have to do a lot of right now in Oregon, is gone. I had a lot of belongings that I ended up just having to leave behind in Pensacola that were never able to be shipped to me anywhere, that I have no idea what happened to, including my sewing machine that I used to use on Etsy, which I'm hoping that the friend I was letting keep track of just kept the sewing machine, but like, I don't know what happened to the rest of a lot of the things. Zeigha's sewing machine and a really expensive wig that we had and a bunch of their other possessions ended up having to be left behind with toxic family members. My computer also ended up being stolen while I was in Las Vegas by people who had kidnapped me. We did also include the price of a better computer to work from with all of the heavy video editing that we do, because right now we're working from a little laptop, and I mean it does what it can, but it's not really suited for it, and it really puts restrictions on like how long it takes to get these things done and what we are and are not able to do. Zeigha's clothing has a habit of getting holes in it, especially where their thighs sort of rub together because they're bigger and B. So we went ahead and put an amount to put towards replacing clothing and makeup and things that just generally, you know, for self-care are good to have if you have like long hair, for example, like a blow dryer. That was another thing I had just bought a replacement for right before I left Pensacola. And we included another budget for having just, you know, generally a few things to furnish the room, like a desk to make work easier. We just basically need the room to be able to be functional and livable as a living space and a workspace. We went ahead and included the price to foam treat the walls because we do audio work in here and the reverb is not great, and also it's good for mental health purposes to be able to have a quiet room where the sound doesn't reverb as much and you can kind of be able to like meditate and have your thoughts, which is important for all of us. We included the cost of replacing my therapy lighting, which I had when I was in Pensacola and when I was in North Carolina, but ended up having to leave behind and haven't been able to replace, which is really important for my mental health. I know I like promised myself at one point in time, because I'm super silly, that my next car would be a Trans Am to replace the Firebird, that I ended up having to have repossessed voluntarily when I was sick at a point in time and couldn't work for 3 months, a couple of years before I came out. And the Saturn that was my first car that I bought, that I ended up giving away to someone who really hurt me and sort of left me abandoned after I came out. It's just something within the range that seems reasonable to be able to work towards right now.
Mostly when I was looking at stuff that was over 16 years old. Toyotas, basically.
Yeah.
Because Toyotas are usually reliable.
Yeah, something that we can afford to insure, but that is, you know, it's reliable, but it's older and it's not fancy or frilly, because we need to be able to get from place to place for work and to be able to take care of important things like being able to take care of medical needs, like going to see a therapist or going to take care of like hormone visits and seeing doctors for things like surgery and letters and things like that too. I feel like it really just says a lot about exactly how much is taken from you that you worked for your whole life when you come out as a transgender person. I feel like in Zeigha's case, it also especially says a lot for the fact that that's not limited to trans people who are medically transitioning, and it affects non-binary people too. It affects the people who love transgender people too. It affects our families and friends who have to watch us go through this when we end up in situations where being trans sort of weights against us in society, in situations that are not as devastating for people who carry sort of those invisible privileges that they just sort of take for granted that aren't so invisible to us. We also might be moving very soon, so we included that potential cost there. Obviously, if that ends up happening, it wouldn't be a huge ordeal for the things that we want to do with the room that we're in right now, because we would just be able to move everything. We want to be able to get back to being able to say thank you in a lot of the ways I was able to do before for people's support, which I was able to do by doing my modeling work and sending out photos to say thank you to my patrons on patreon.com. So we're looking to replace the current video camera we have with a camera that we can use for that and for better quality videos for y'all. So the total number we came to was $7,500, which is like, we looked at everything and tried to price it out sort of as basic as we could. And like I said, definitely looking at like getting sort of a junker that you know, not necessarily a junker because we want something that's reliable, but something cheap, reliable, but like it probably older. I feel like that about covers it. I didn't want to make it like excessive to like try to pimp out the room or anything. We're obviously not expecting to be able to accomplish what we need to overnight. We're not expecting any like large huge donations from any like individual people or anything like that. We just want your help in sharing this and spreading the word and kind of making people aware that, you know, this is part of the struggle of what trans people go through, and also helping us reach the audience that we need to be able to actually crowdfund the way that, you know, crowdfunding is supposed to work, which is, you know, a lot of people coming together in the ways that we can to support something bigger than we can support on our own as individuals. We know that the haters are gonna hate, but we know that y'all are all amazing and real and true, and that's what matters. So we want to thank y'all all so very much for that, and we love you all so very much. I feel like it should always go without saying, but it doesn't always necessarily, because some people are ugly whenever you have a crowdfund like this, that donations are one of those things things that, you know, for someone like me, it's like tips, you know, for a tattoo artist or something like that. It's always appreciated, never expected. I'm always constantly conscious as a queer content creator on YouTube, where unfortunately we're having our content demonetized a lot lately, which has had a huge impact. That it is because of my Delia boppers, which is what I like to call my fans, because I feel like they deserve like a name, because I think of them as my friends and my family, that I am able to do this work. It's because they believe in spreading awareness about trans people and trans lives and what we are like, and the fact that we are worth better than what Zeigha and I have had to go through. So I want you all to know how much I love you, each and every single one of you. All of you are an inspiration to me, because it's thinking of you that keeps me going, and the fact that like I'm here for something bigger than myself because of y'all. Because of y'all, I'm here surviving, even though I have a mother who thinks of me as the thing that killed the son who is dead to her. I'm here even though one of my ex-partners who I was with when I came out told me the first time I came out to her privately that I better shove it back in a closet or else there would be consequences, and there were. But thanks to all of you, I am here. I am alive. And also for Zeigha, like being an agender person, being left alone after having to leave toxic family is not any easier by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like one of the things I haven't really been opening up about as much as I should lately is how much I have been traumatized by the situations I've gone through, to the point of like fearing a lack of stability in my life in the past, you know, to the point that even now being able to get my vaginoplasty taken care of, I'm scared of like, oh my gosh, what if something were to happen, even though I know logically when I look at the situation around me that there is stability and it's time to rebuild. So I guess this is just basically the point where we're looking at trying to rebuild our lives, and we're humbly asking for your support in being able to do that. We want to do updates and thank you videos for every goal that we are able to accomplish, no matter how small it is, seemingly to people on the outside, because when you're a woman who's been through everything that I've been through, none of it is small. And if you want to show your support in a more continued manner, I do have a Patreon that supports my work on YouTube and my music at patreon.com/DeliaMelody. We have a joint Patreon that supports our joint work for our channel Trans Dimension Gaming, which is a channel of gaming videos, kind of like Game Grumps, but like by trans gamers for trans gamers. It's not just like Game Grumps, obviously, because I feel like we're better at what we do. No offense to Danny and Aaron, because they're huge inspirations, but you know, we take pride in our work, damn it. I feel like maybe one day we could have the potential to be better, but we're good at what we do. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of queer content on YouTube actually is being sort of blacklisted from searches by tags that are identifiable as queer content, which we use. This obviously also affects my personal channel, as well as the fact that the ads are so restricted and limited, and just like you make basically nothing off of them at that point. It's not the way it used to be. But the only way we can overcome that is to come together as a community to raise awareness and support one another, and also raise awareness to our allies, who I'm sure would be thrilled to be supportive of causes they support as well. And I know that with your support, which we appreciate so much and want to thank you so much for, that we can continue working through this and getting back to a point where life is going to be normal again and better, and we can continue working together now that my life is more stable and that I'm recovering from all of the damage that was done to me by the people who wanted to hurt me. We can basically get back to business as usual and even better, and start implementing all of the great ideas I've had that I was getting so close to right before I left Pensacola, into making my channel a much more educative space for people to be able to gain more sex positive awareness on trans and LGBT people, especially transgender women from, and, you know, be able to have resources for trans people who are wondering what they're going to experience, especially trans women who are wondering what they're going to experience transitioning, to be able to learn again from like my journey and what I've been through and experienced. Hopefully not as rough though. But the reality is that my story is not unusual. You see trans people with crowdfunding all the time, to the point that like I find it really ironic and self-defeating, but like groups on Facebook that trans people are in, they literally ban like crowdfunding because otherwise like all the trans people would have needs. But you know, if you support trans people and trans rights and equality and the quality of our lives being able to not be as heavily impacted by the violence that we face, and you know, the ability for us to be able to, for example, be content creators for whether it's educational, entertainment, music, whatever it is, to pursue our dreams and be able to not be detrimentally like sabotaged in a way that non-queer content creators are not. Now is just especially a super important time to support all your queer content creators if you can, in the ways that you can, because it's just been having such a huge detrimental impact on us all. So I encourage you to support other queer content creators, no matter who they are. I mean, like even Stevie Bobby has been having issues as popular as she is thanks to all of this. Even not being trans, just having queer positive sex ed content is enough to cause issues for a YouTuber right now. And it sucks, especially considering that like we're just coming off of Pride Month. But I know that with your support, we're all gonna get through this, and we're gonna continue working to make tomorrow brighter for everyone, so that everyone can just be themselves and live an amazing, vibrant life and just blaze beautifully like the stars that we all are. Thank you, as always, again, so very much for your support. We love you so much. Have a beautiful day. Peace out. Till next time, be your most beautiful you.